If you're thinking about building a new home and you don't know where to start, you're going to want to hear this. Imagine if you just spent $2,000 on a set of house plans that you couldn't use to build. You'd be pretty upset, right? Well, you wouldn't be alone. It seems like every time I turn around, I get another call from a homeowner that has a full set of plans that 5 other builders tell them they can't afford to build. In some cases, we've even had people approach us with custom house plans that cost them $10,000, only to realize they had to start all over. Today's video is about cost planning. Is this the most important step in building a new home? What's up, everybody? I'm Logan, and this is Heirloom Builders. Welcome back to our series on building a house, start to finish. On today's video, we're going to talk about the cost to build a new home and the most important factors that drive that cost. It's easy to waste a lot of time and money building a new home and still not even get what you wanted in the first place. So we're going to talk about the steps that we take to make it a smooth process. Let's do it. It blows me away to see how many home sites we come across where there's a big clearing with a driveway, but no house, or a completely abandoned concrete foundation, when it turns out the county had already issued a site assessment for that lot, illustrating a 100-year floodplain and setbacks from a critically protected watershed. Or the owner had enough money to build a house, but not the extra $50,000 that it was going to cost to clear the lot, build the driveway, cross a creek, and get to the house site. That's crazy. Why does this keep happening? More often than not, people find some kind of misleading information on the internet about the cost to build a home, and then start to plan around that fictional cost. There's a never-ending debate in the building industry about the best way to summarize the cost of a home. You might have heard someone say, "We built our house for $150 a square foot," or "I heard the average cost of a new home was only $100 a square foot." Most of the time, those price per square foot numbers are extremely vague, and every contractor has a different way of calculating that cost to build. So today, I want to help you understand the major components of building a new home so you can ask your contractor the right questions and make sure you know exactly what you'll be getting for the cost presented to you. Cost per square foot figures can be helpful in planning your new home, but most of the time, if you're unfamiliar with the process, it can be pretty misleading. We found it's best to itemize the cost per square foot and break it into the following major components: heated square footage, decks, covered porches, garages, and site work. If you can ask your builder how much they expect each of these things will cost, you'll be well on your way to designing a home that you can actually afford to build. It's really important to take the time up front to lay out all the costs involved from start to finish so that you don't get in over your head. There's no point in starting a project that you can't finish. And that's where cost planning comes in. It's arguably the most important step in the entire process because it sets forth a clear path for the whole building process and ensures there'll be no major surprises along the way. This cost planning process is where we identify your project goals and analyze your site to predict both the rough cost to develop the land and how much you should budget to build your home. Taking the time to do this can save you thousands of dollars and months of wasted time. We cut to the chase by helping you plan a financially viable project. In other words, a project you can afford to build. The best thing you can do if you're interested in building a new home is find a reputable builder and have them walk you through all of the costs associated to build in your area. Let's start with the first and most important: heated square footage. This is the area of your home that's conditioned with heat and air conditioning. Your livable square footage. These are all the indoor spaces like the kitchen, the bathrooms, bedrooms, closets, and any other space that's within your insulated building envelope. Now, keep in mind the concept of economies of scale, which says that the bigger you build, the cheaper each square foot will be. That's due to a number of factors, like the ratio between high-dollar spaces that have lots of plumbing and lighting and expensive appliances and floor finishes like the kitchen and bathrooms, versus cheaper square footage like bedrooms and closets and living rooms that are mostly empty space with no plumbing and only basic lighting requirements. No matter what size home you build, you'll have a refrigerator, a stove, sink, probably a dishwasher, and all the same appliances. If you build a huge house, you'll have lots of spaces that are cheap square footage, like extra bedrooms and big closets that will help offset and lower the price per square foot for heated space. On the flip side, if you plan to build a small home, you still have all of the same kitchen appliances and fixtures, but just fewer bedrooms and open space to offset the higher cost of the kitchen and bath space. So your smaller home will generally have a higher cost per square foot. That is the economy of scale. The bigger you build, the cheaper each square foot will be. For 1,000 to 1,300 square foot custom homes, we budget about $220 a square foot. For 3,000 square foot homes and larger, we typically budget between $150 and $200 per heated square foot. You might be thinking, wow, that's a big range. And you're right, those are big ranges. The actual cost will vary based on the scope and level of finishes that we ultimately determine during the design development phase. For example, we build airtight homes with lots of custom detailing and high-end finishes, and so our cost per square foot is higher than your average builder. But at the same time, we're very hands-on. We do all the work ourselves and typically cost much less than your typical high-end builder that hires out most of the work to expensive specialists that drive up the cost. Moving on to number 2, decks. Decks are simply a wood frame and floor system outside your home that usually rests on a simple concrete pier foundation. They're fairly easy to build and will be your cheapest square footage. We budget about $20 to $30 a square foot for decks, depending on the type of decking boards, how high it is above the ground, installation details, things like that. Number 3 is covered porches. Covered porches are some of the most coveted space in a home. They provide a shelter transition to the outdoors and are a great place to hang out with friends and family when the weather's nice. We usually budget about $50 to $75 a square foot for covered porches. The big range there is because of all the variables. What kind of deck or hardscaping will the floor be? What type of roofing will be required, like metal or asphalt shingles? Are there intricate exterior trim details and painting? Is there a wood ceiling, lights, ceiling fans? Are there screened-in sections? There's a lot of factors to consider there, and it's definitely worth your time to figure all that out before you sign a contract and start building, so you don't end up getting thousands of dollars in change orders because the cost and scope wasn't clear in the beginning. Number 4, garages. A garage is a really useful and cost-effective space to build. Not only can you help keep your vehicles protected from the elements, it can double as a storage space and a workshop when you need it to be. The average cost for an attached garage on a custom home is $75 to $100 a square foot. There's a concrete slab, floor, walls, windows, doors, siding, drywall, insulation, electrical, sometimes even plumbing. Just no heating and air conditioning or finished flooring. Number 5 is site work. Site work is the biggest variable when you're building a home, especially on rural land with no infrastructure. If you're planning to build in a developed subdivision, your cost to build will be very straightforward. It'll be easy to find out what the fees are for connecting to the existing water and sewer. All of the infrastructure costs and site work required to get you ready to build are built into the cost of the lot. Building a house is relatively cut and dry, unless of course there's tons of custom finishes or complicated design features. On the other hand, if you're developing a vacant lot on rural land that has no water, sewer, or power infrastructure, it's going to be critical to explore those costs and how those will add to your building project. Clearing a wooded lot for a house site, installing a driveway, crossing a creek, installing a septic system, and drilling a well for water are all typical costs to develop rural land. And if there's no power nearby, you may incur fees from your energy utility to get power out to your house site. It's not uncommon to spend $50,000 to $100,000 on site and infrastructure development for a new home on vacant land. You'll definitely want to know how much money it's going to cost to do all this, because that can seriously affect your house building budget. During this critical cost planning phase of the pre-construction process, we determine your goals for the design and assess the site for all of those infrastructure costs, like building a driveway, clearing, grading, well, and septic. And we factor those infrastructure costs into the total cost to build so that you can understand what's involved and make the best decisions with your money as you move forward with designing your new home. You certainly don't want there to be surprises after you started building that force you to abandon the project and forfeit all the money and time that you've invested up to that point. This is critical. Permitting is one of the first and most important steps. If you are in fact building a new home on a rural lot, you'll need approval from the planning department to make sure that the land is zoned as residential. You'll also want to make sure that they complete a site assessment, which will determine environmental factors like a 100-year floodplain and critically protected watersheds that you need to observe certain setbacks from. The planning department will also issue a permit for disturbing the land and offer guidelines for best practices so you don't inadvertently cause a bunch of soil erosion after you clear the land and start moving dirt. Once you get through the planning department, your next step will likely be the health department, who will inspect your land for suitable soils and install a septic system to dispose of your human and water waste. They'll also be the ones that approve your application to drill a well to obtain water on site. If your soils are no good, it may cost you $30,000 to $50,000 to install an unconventional on-site water treatment system. You see what I mean? You're definitely going to want to know all this before you get too far planning your home if you have a tight budget. After you get permits to construct a septic system and drill a well, you should be able to move forward with the building department and get a permit to build your home. But again, if you have a tight budget, you're going to want to team up with a builder that can accurately estimate the cost to develop this critical infrastructure and factor all the permitting requirements into the total build cost before you can really determine how much you can afford to build on a certain piece of land. And that's about the gist of the site assessment. If you want to build a home, especially on rural land, find a reputable builder that can accurately project the cost to develop that land. That way, you can include those costs with your house budget and determine a reliable total cost to build, and avoid surprises along the way that would prevent you from completing your project. The actual costs to build a home are a little more cut and dry. We know the rough cost to build heated square footage, the cost to build a garage, the cost to build porches. The key is to separate these different components as you plan the massing or size and spaces of your home so you can easily adjust the design to fit both your priorities and your budget. The biggest fluctuation and uncertainty nowadays is the volatility of lumber and material costs. We're not going to get into all that right now, but typically building costs can be estimated pretty accurately based on units like square footage, lineal feet, cubic yards, and so on. These numbers can be predicted pretty easily even at the earliest stages of cost planning, where all you may know is how many square feet, the number of bedrooms and bathrooms, and the level of quality you want your finishes to be. For us, we literally jot down your basic goals and design criteria and enter them into our cost planning spreadsheet to determine a rough cost to build. For example, we've been averaging about $200 a square foot for heated square footage with mid to high-end finishes, and about $60 a square foot for covered porches with a wood deck, lighting, and ceiling fans. Separating out the major components like heated square footage, decks, porches, garage, and site work has been really helpful for us in determining the overall cost to build. You can't just lump it all together. I mean, for example, a 2,000 square foot home on a concrete slab with a basic covered front entry porch is not going to cost the same as a 2,000 square foot home with a wraparound porch and a wood deck. That outdoor area is not free square footage, and it shouldn't be combined with the heated square footage. That just jumbles up your numbers and makes it difficult to determine where to adjust the design to cut costs most effectively. By separating the costs of the different major components of a home, we can usually get within 10% of the actual build, even at this early stage. And then we simply add the cost to develop the infrastructure on your lot to get a total build cost and make sure it fits in your budget. From there, we can take the next step, schematic design, where we develop the floor plan, elevations, massing, and start to hone in on some of the details of your new home. Stay tuned for details on how we design a new home, coming up next in this start to finish series. That's it for now, y'all. I hope this video was helpful. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe on your way out and stay tuned for another episode of Building a House Start to Finish every Monday at 8 p.m. Until then, peace out.